TCS, Infosys, Wipro, these are all priced at around 15p right now. And just in January 2025, they were priced at around 30p. So are we looking at an opportunity to double our money? How to find AI investment opportunity in India? हमारे साथ हैं Mr. Vivek Doval and Mr. Amit Sharma, who have been investing in the global tech market for decades, and now they've started investing in India also. So, hi, welcome Vivek, welcome Amit. Let's start with Vivek. जब यूएस में बात होती है एआई की, we always talk about Nvidia. India में, when we start looking at AI companies, listed AI companies, where should we start from? कहाँ से शुरुआत होनी चाहिए? And how should we narrow down on our investments?
You know, आजकल globally जहाँ भी बात होती है, there is so much of talk of Nvidia manufactures GPUs, chipsets for the artificial intelligence. We have to understand that India is the market in which there will be maximum diffusion of artificial intelligence. And actually, it is not something of the future. It's happening right now. Now, in that, we have to say and we have to look at companies that are also embracing artificial intelligence usage in their operations very rapidly. There are a number of companies. You know, we have heard some great commentary on artificial intelligence usage by companies such as TCS, Infosys, some of the banks like HDFC Bank, SBI, ICICI. But I would actually say beyond the IT services companies, the banking sector, we should actually be looking at numerous companies.
Can I add a couple of things in here first? Again, why are we talking about artificial intelligence? I think, it's a relevant topic, and it's very relevant because it's one of the biggest technological trends that has happened in probably my career. Suddenly, the area of computing, which was open only to a select few, is now available to the masses. And which is coming to Vivek's point that countries or people where you have mass population, which is educated, well talented, and is able to improve their efficiencies and productivity by a lot, will benefit the most. And the biggest thing is, you can talk about Nvidia, you can talk about all the other companies. They are the infrastructure and product creators. But at the end of the day, AI is a tool. And it's like electricity. किसी को फर्क नहीं पड़ता कि इलेक्ट्रिसिटी किसने इन्वेंट की थी, but everyone is using it. The users will benefit the most, and India will benefit a lot more. Just adding to Vivek's point there.
So, Vivek, आपने कहा profits will increase. I would like if you could answer that part कि top line पे क्या असर आएगा and bottom line पे क्या असर आएगा, उसका आप अगर पूरा relation बता सकें. We've had some conversations, that's why I wanted to more.
यस यहाँ देखिए अनुज, ऐसा है कि आज के टाइम पे जब आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस प्रोलिफरेट कर रहा है, इसमें दो किस्म की कंपनीज हैं. इसमें एक पर्टिकुलरली इंडियन इकोसिस्टम में आईटी सर्विसेज कंपनीज हैं, और जो बाकी हैं वो नॉन आईटी सर्विसेज कंपनीज, जो बाकी सेक्टर्स की कंपनीज हैं. जो बाकी सेक्टर्स की कंपनीज हैं, उनकी जो प्राइसिंग है और जो डिमांड है, वो उनके अपने सेक्टर से डिटरमिन होता है. जैसे कि कोई बैंक कितना इंटरेस्ट रेट चार्ज कर रहा है, किस तरह से क्या चार्जेस कर रहा है अपने कस्टमर के लिए, लेट अस से फॉर कार्ड लोन्स, फॉर कार लोन्स, फॉर मॉर्गेजेस एक्सेट्रा. उसका आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस से कोई उसकी प्राइसिंग का फर्क
Right.
नहीं पड़ता.
Right.
लेकिन क्योंकि उनका काफ़ी काम प्रोसेसिंग का काम होता है बैंक का, तो वो काफ़ी हद तक अपनी कॉस्ट्स को काट सकते हैं आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस को एम्ब्रेस करके. तो इन कंपनीज़ को तो मैक्सिमम बेनिफिट मिलेगा. इनको टॉप लाइन इनकी टॉप लाइन का भी बेनिफिट मिलेगा कि अपने कस्टमर्स को कैसे अच्छी तरह से ज़्यादा टारगेट कर सकते हैं, ज़्यादा कस्टमर्स को अपने पास से जोड़ सकते हैं. और बॉटम लाइन का तो बहुत ज़्यादा मिलेगा क्योंकि ये अपनी कॉस्ट रिडक्शंस को काफ़ी कम कर सकते हैं. तो यहाँ जो टॉप लाइन पे ज़्यादा फ़र्क नहीं पड़ेगा और बॉटम लाइन पे बहुत ज़्यादा पॉजिटिव बेनिफिट मिलेगा. तो ये तो हुई नॉन आईटी सर्विसेज कंपनीज़.
Right.
आईटी सर्विसेज कंपनीज़ में थोड़ा ये इक्वेशन चेंज हो जाती है कि इनके कस्टमर्स जानते हैं कि आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस आ रहा है, और उसके वजह से कि इनका कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोड्यूसिंग थिंग्स कम हो जाती है. तो जैसे इनकी कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोड्यूसिंग थिंग्स कम होती है, इनको कुछ नो कॉस्ट रिडक्शंस अपने कस्टमर्स को पास करनी पड़ेंगी, कॉस्ट बेनिफिट्स, और अपने थोड़े से टैरिफ्स को कम करना पड़ेगा। तो इनके हो सकता है मार्जिन्स तो इम्प्रूव हों, लेकिन इनकी टॉप लाइन थोड़ी-सी इफ़ेक्ट हो। लेकिन जो हम देख रहे हैं कि इनके पास आज नहीं, लेकिन आगे कुछ क्वार्टर्स में इतना ज़्यादा और काम आएगा कि जो टॉप लाइन है, जो अभी ऐसा लग रहा है काफ़ी
Okay.
स्लगिश ही है, ये भी री-एक्सेलरेट करेगी।
IT services, the three put together, Infosys, TCS, and Wipro, they bought more than 3 lakh licenses of Microsoft Copilot. What you are saying is totally right. Amit, I know you have a tech background. So if you could throw some light on small language model, ये exactly है क्या? So large language model we all are talking about, and now newspapers and media is talking about tokens are very expensive, and then Infosys comes out with a statement that they've built a small language model for the fintech companies. What is small language model? What is your opinion on that?
Anuj, very simply stated, the models, there are two types of models at the moment. One is you've got the, very cutting edge models, जिसमें you have जो सबसे ज़्यादा, जिसमें ज़्यादा data है, जिसमें ज़्यादा training हुई है, and there is much, much better algorithms that are running. So those are really at the cutting edge. And cutting edge is, the latest of the latest model. Ab, what I have been, so whilst we've been investing in tech or knowing about tech, हम अपने आप भी we've been using AI for the past 2.5, 3 years. In fact, we have an AI lab which has been running since 2018. So we've been experimenting with AI on its own. And what we find is that you don't need to be really at the cutting edge all the time. A lot of tasks can be done with cheaper or very simpler models. Now, that is a reality which suits very well in India, in Indian context. I mean, I'm coming to Infosys, TCS, what you're saying. But हमारी general जो thinking होती है वो ये होती है कि economically कर लें, जितनी use होनी है उतनी use करें, rather than build the best of the models. Like जैसे हमने अपने जो Mars mission है, that was built. The whole mission was built roughly at the cost of a Hollywood movie about Mars, right? हमने तो मिशन बना दी थी. So
Uh,
we have so I think ये जो approach है, you will see a bifurcation, and especially in country like India where you have like 1.4 billion people, आपको हर एक की problem solve करने के लिए you don't need the most cutting edge model. You will come up with a simpler model which is freely available, and it's free. The only cost will be inference cost. So the simpler the model, the lower your cost, but it may be
right,
effective for your task. So to answer your question,
right.
small language model, large language model, you can give it whatever name. The thing is, the real question is, do you want to use the most cutting edge model which uses more tokens, or your work, can it be done by a cheaper, simpler, model more effectively? And I think the latter approach is, I think India में बहुत चलने की, क्योंकि it suits us. That's how we think.
Mhm. Yeah. So are our companies capable of building these cheaper models, doing specific tasks in specific domains?
In fact, just Anuj, on that point, I think Honorable Minister of Science and Technology in India, Ashwini Vaishnav
Right.
at the AI conference had mentioned as much that small language models are will have a big potential in India at academic institutions, R&D facilities, etc. And a lot of them are already in play in many of these places. So it is not something that is going to come in the future. These models are being employed extensively around the country.
Now we have also reached a point where we can say that in the IT sector also, Indians अपना रास्ता निकाल ही लेंगे. Cheaper tokens, specific domain expertise of a model will be created within India. That's a very interesting point, and we can already see such statements being made by the board of Infosys and TCS. So models sorted, but models have to run on data centers. We are hearing Meta and Reliance putting up a data center in Jamnagar, and Google, Amazon, all of them. Andhra is so aggressively wooing data centers. If you could put some light on that. how, so 2 points. One is data center an interesting investment from an investor's point of view? Second, how do we evaluate data center as an investment?
Actually, as we answer this question, I'll leave Amit to answer this question very specifically, but I will provide some context to it. There is so much of artificial intelligence being consumed in India at this point of time. Up to about 100 million subscribers of OpenAI are from India. So AI adoption is very rapid in India. But what we are losing out is that all the data that the Indians are, that the Indians are 100 million Indian users are providing their data to all the global major companies. And this data is leaving the shores of India for the majority and is making the models of some of the largest international companies stronger. But we are losing. Also, India is coming up with a sovereign policy of actually ensuring that the data, a lot of the data doesn't leave the shores of India. Now, regarding whether the data center business per se is lucrative or not, I will leave that to Amit.
I think, Anuj, data centers as a business, I don't know whether you can think of it as just a data center business. It's not like one business. You've got a real estate angle. It requires a lot of space. It requires expertise in putting those chips together, getting the power infrastructure together, and things like that. So one is building and land, the other is chips and the infrastructure which you need, to get those chips to run. And then lastly, it is like, is it, so it is a, infrastructure kind of a business. You can look at it as a long-term, factory that you've created. So you can look at it in many angles. And I think as a business, if you look at if I were to create a data center today anywhere, and we've done the math for some countries, and we've looked at it, it is a pretty lucrative business because the revenues that a data center can make out of the tokens is much more than the costs at which they can make it once they've made the data center. One is that you've got to really see who's really got the customers, because you will make money over the long term. You have to set up a factory, and then that data factory will take several years for you to recoup your money. But the IRRs, which is the way people look at projects, is pretty attractive. You can get your money back in 3 to 5 years in some cases, 5 to 10 years in some other cases. But it's a pretty lucrative business on its own. However, there are lots of caveats. If just a real estate guy says, I'm going to do data centers, I don't know whether he can do it. They can do it on their own. It requires a lot of different skill set as well. So you need to be aware who's doing it. Second, you also need to be aware, what's your capacity? And is it contracted out? Or is it like, my customers will come as and when it will come? Because the data centers that we've looked at across the world, some of them are contracted out for 20 years, if not 10. 10 is definitely out. कई 20 साल तक के लिए contracted out है. So, there your economic looks very good. So you have to look case by case basis. Macro call, yes, data, you require data for AI. So data centers will come up if if the Indian data has to stay within India, you will need more data centers, but you will have to look at it on a case by case basis, because as I said, there are lots of nuances.
Just adding on to what Amit said, if you actually look at the historical example of the data centers in the US, a very famous company from the US, Amazon, actually was one of the pioneers in data centers in the US of launching Amazon Web Services. Back in the day, in about 2007, 2008, when they were launching it, well, there were a lot of people were skeptical about it. But if you look at the track record of it, even prior to the artificial intelligence revolution, it has been a very, very prominent, it has been a very promising and very profitable venture, as has been Microsoft and Google's cloud businesses and data centers. So data centers per se are actually extremely profitable. But what Amit has laid out, where the economics haven't really been negotiated or evaluated very carefully, there could be some, unprofitable or unviable data centers, but by and large, for the sector, it would be extremely profitable.
Right. So where it is the contracts are not long term or in place, that is a red flag. Are there any other red flags that we should look at when we are evaluating data center as an investment?
Yeah, I mean, Anuj, as I mentioned, firstly, capability of the guy. If a real estate developer says, "Oh, अच्छा land मेरे पास है, मैं data center बना दूंगा," it's not that straightforward. It is a specialized skill set. Then, more
Right.
importantly, it has to have other things. Power connectivity है कि नहीं, because these consume a lot of power. And beyond that, as I mentioned, announced versus built. Some may say, oh, मेरी इतनी capacity है और इतनी बन जाएगी या ऐसे होगा. And you can say whatever, right? You will have to finally deliver or have an end customer who's buying it. If you don't have that locked in, then there is a problem.
Like a gigawatt data center in the US um, could cost as much as $50 billion to or so. So when we look at the Indian demand, we don't think a gigawatt data center would suffice for the future. India would probably require, I don't know, maybe several gigawatt, 15, 20, maybe even that. So the amount of capacity addition of the data centers that we are talking about would be substantial. The capex could be running into maybe even $1 trillion potentially in time. And so there are risks with financing because, there's a big outlay related to it. So that could be a concern when evaluating particular data centers. Do they have the funding in place? Land would be an issue. Availability of power will be a big issue because this is a very power intensive sector, and it cannot have outages, etc. Otherwise, you lose out on revenues. So, power, financing, funding, land will all be limiting items for this particular sector. Having said that, I say it with a lot of interest, with a lot of with a lot of satisfaction that many of the Indian state governments, such as Andhra, Telangana, Gujarat, are embracing this sector, are trying to attract it. They're offering land at good prices, good locations, providing power. At any rate, the US majors are looking to invest a lot of money into India. And that would be great for, the capex story within India.
A very direct question. TCS, Infosys, Wipro, these are all priced at around 15p right now. And just in January 2025, they were priced at around 30p. So are we looking at an opportunity to double our money by investing? Because if all these opportunities that we're talking about, as you're saying, are there, a drop of 50% from 30 to 15, is there an opportunity?
From a market's perspective, you know, there are two types of stocks which go at 15 times, 12 times, 13 times. One is, companies which are just cheap. So for some reason, they are cheap. Then there are other companies which are value traps. And value traps are companies which can even fall further. There is only one question you need to answer there. The question is their current business breaking? Or the model broken? If the model is broken, that 15 times can go to 5 times, 7 times multiple. So it can keep. So there is no guarantee that 15, 15 से 30 ही होगा वो. कोई guarantee नहीं है. The question you have to answer is the business model intact or broken?
Right.
So it looks like market currently thinks कि इनके business models are at risk. When I talk about इनके, TCS, Infosys, they were billing per hour. Now AI has come in. Now AI will eat into their revenues and their business model is going to be impacted badly. That's the assumption market is making. We think that's completely wrong. I mean, I think that's our view. We think actually these guys, the IT services companies, sit at a very key position in this AI revolution. Yes, the first level impact may be okay. Some of their revenues get impacted because customers want discounts, as Vivek mentioned. But these are the same companies who will see the AI adoption of the highest level within themselves. Actually, the data that Vivek was giving about India being about 10% of Claude's or of OpenAI's traffic, most of it is coming from like 4 or 5 cities, which you can name as the IT hubs of India. So actually, AI companies are using, these services companies are using AI thoroughly. One, internally to improve their efficiency. But two, I think this is we've spent a lot of time, we look at the whole ecosystem of technology, not just services companies. We look at companies which make AI, companies which use just IT, the Fortune 500 companies and everyone else. What we are seeing there is actually, whilst AI can do certain things, our thinking and our understanding is that you're going to need people who understand these systems to be able to even implement AI within these companies. So finally, we think these IT services companies' revenues may even grow quite a lot. Maybe for the next 1-2 years, we may see some pressure because, there is this renegotiation, customer saying, lower your price, this and that. But nobody is accounting for this fact that these guys are going to be still key in implementing in enterprise level AI projects. Absolutely key. That's our view. Secondly, enterprise adoption of AI is at very low level at the moment. As more and more companies, enterprises adopt AI, we will see more revenues coming to these companies. So actually, when you say opportunity, I think firstly, there is this opportunity that people are thinking of these companies as their business model is permanently impacted negatively. We disagree with that. So yes, there may be some re-rating there. But the other factor which Vivek is saying is there is a massive, earnings growth story which is playing out on a much longer scale in India and in many other countries. And these guys get benefit.
Add to what Amit is saying, the Indian IT services companies are currently getting 80-90% of their revenues outside India. So they're playing to the international opportunity. In that opportunity, currently there is a slight rebalancing of IT spends away from services towards making AI investments by many of their enterprise customers. But soon that is changing. Soon these companies will have to spend more in software and in services. In fact, as far as software is concerned, we are seeing very strong trends across the board. The companies are spending a lot on enterprise software, and that is going on. So we expect more enterprises, more services spend to also come through in a short period of time for the international client. But beyond that, we are actually saying that the Indian IT services companies actually will actually end up playing a much bigger role in the Indian AI ecosystem, which will grow massively.
Uh, Direct AI players or layers, or investing in energy sector, or the transport renewable sector, that will benefit the AI layers. Which one would you choose?
I think without a doubt, I will not be going into any of the derivative names. Don't do that. I would just play into the mainstream larger companies within India, which would be the big beneficiaries of the AI in way of adoption. I think, if you do get hold of a data center company that gets listed in India, which is doing good operations, there are a few already in the market. Maybe those could be interesting. But overall, the whole market should benefit. I think any thinking of you thinking that you know better or someone knows better about how a power business will ramp up. There is no certainty whether that power business will ramp up. The example of how power businesses have ramped up in the country over the last 15 years has been mired by several bankruptcies and kind of and things, etc. Even the solar sector, which is sometimes touted to be extremely good, has been mired by many bankruptcies and change of hands. Even though the sector has done well, the promoters haven't and the investors haven't. So we would play it safe and we would go with the mainstream, larger listed companies across sectors without being too specific on it.
Right. So Vivek did mention there are data center companies which are listed. We just need to look into various opportunities. So there's data center, IT, and SLMs that we have spoken about. All of them are playing out in India. तो summary ये है, AI is a tool like electricity. हमको एज इन्वेस्टर ये ढूंढना है कि इसको बेस्ट यूज कौन करेगा अपने सेक्टर में. 1 2, जैसे 10% कॉस्ट पे इंडिया ने मंगलयान स्पेस पे पहुंचा दिया था, वैसे ही इंडिया विल रिड्यूस द टोकन कॉस्ट बाय 80 to 90% बाय यूजिंग स्मॉल लैंग्वेज मॉडल्स। 3, इंडियन आईटी कंपनीज का बिजनेस मॉडल ब्रेक नहीं हुआ है, इट इज जस्ट इवॉल्विंग। 30p रेशियो पे ट्रेड कर रहा था, आज 15 पे कर रहा है। Sounds like an opportunity. 4, how to evaluate the data center business and what are the red flags? Vivek and Amit, your international investing experience will help us find the right AI opportunity within India. Thanks a lot for your time and insights. Cheers.